What's up, Copy Squad? It's your boy, Kyle Milligan of KyleTheWriter.com, and today we're going to talk about crushing imposter syndrome. And that is to say, we're going to crush imposter syndrome. We're not going to talk about a crushing feeling of imposter syndrome, though we might just a little bit talk about that too. So, the question posed to me by a subscriber, one of you beautiful people, was, I'm struggling with imposter syndrome. Do you struggle with it? How did you get over it? Etc., etc., right? Imposter syndrome, it sucks. I should have read the question more directly, but basically, the question was split into two parts. Like, how did you overcome imposter syndrome, and do you still feel imposter syndrome? So, let's say one instance of imposter syndrome I felt. The answer is yes, I feel imposter syndrome constantly. How do I get over it? How do I crush imposter syndrome? And I put it in quotes because it is something that will absolutely never go away. Sorry, not sorry, but you can adopt strategies that make you sort of embrace imposter syndrome, and that's what I've done. So, I was in a meeting. So, for those who don't know me, my name is Kyle Milligan. I'm a copywriter at Agora Financial, which is one of the largest financial publishing businesses like in the world. And I've personally grossed $7.1 million for copywriting clients. People, not for me, but for other folks in the copyright, or not copywriting world, but for people who are selling stuff, I've helped them make $7.1 million in 2018 in a single year. I have to reword my pitch because I have to create, compliance stuff. Like I'm working on that. I'll figure it out. But pretty much, okay, let's start there. Every time I sit down and I say, hey, I'm Kyle Milligan, I made $7.1 million in a year, I feel imposter syndrome creep up in the back of my head. And it says something like, well, you're not on pace to hit it in 2019. You hit it in 2018. It's probably not going to happen for you. You just got lucky in 2018, and everyone's going to find out. Everyone's going to know. That's what imposter syndrome is. It's exactly what it feels like. Someone's going to find you out. Like someone's going to come knocking at your door, and they're going to be standing there, and they're going to say, hey, gotcha. And they'll have like a little clipboard, or they'll have like a folder full of evidence or something like that, and they'll put it in front of you and say, see, I figured you out. I figured out your game. You're not exactly who you say you are. So let's say that right away. Like when I sit down here and I drop credibility, every time I have to drop credibility, every time I mention something like, I worked with Robert Kiyosaki, or I worked with James Altucher, this, that, or I made this much money. Every time I do that, I have a weird like little ping in the back of my head, like ping. And it's like, oh my God, I hope you can keep this up. I hope that this year you don't just fall off. You don't just drop off the map. Every single day, every little thing I say or do, every time I try to create some credibility, which is, oh snap, I'm going to pitch my book. Every time I pitch my book, right? Every time I pitch my book, and the sales premise of that is I can teach you a secret language, right? And I worry every time I pitch the book that if you, for whatever reason, it goes over your head, or it doesn't work for you, it doesn't help you out, then I'm an imposter making claims that I'm not fulfilling on. So again, that's imposter syndrome. It just comes with the territory. What I'd like to do is lay out some strategies for you. So my first response was, did I get over it, or how did I get over it? Well, I don't think you ever get over it. Sorry to say. But that's cool, man. That's a good thing, and I'll explain why it's a good thing. Hey, look, I got a notebook here. Why it's good. So normally I always forget my train of thought, but I put a notepad right here. So I'm gonna come back to that, and I actually won't forget. Oh yeah, so my book. I was supposed to pitch the book like an hour ago. I wrote a book on the secret language of sales. It's actually about it's a book that speaks, Jesus, I'm all over the place today. There's a language that speaks directly to the emotional center of a person's brain. If you can master this language, you can make a lot of money. I personally use this language to help me grow $7.1 million in sales in 2018. If you're interested in that book, it's called Take Their Money. It's available at KyleTheWriter.com/book. Okay, finally, I executed a pitch. All right, cool. So, another case of imposter syndrome, when nobody shows up to my lives. Like, I have this in my head, like, oh, I got all these followers. They send me all these wonderful tweets and messages and emails. They love me and they love my book and they think I'm great. Nobody shows up to the live. Imposter syndrome. Like, they figured it out. They actually don't love me. So, I struggle with it constantly, all day, every day. And I was about to tell you a story about how I just recently had it. It came actually with Robert Kiyosaki and Rich Dad's Retirement Masterclass promo. So Robert Kiyosaki has this promo out. I wrote the promo called Rich Dad's Retirement Masterclass, helping sell his Rich Dad Retirement Masterclass. It is not running right now. And I was in a meeting with another publisher, and the publisher said, what do you have running right now? And I said, well, I kind of have this Robert Kiyosaki thing running. I have some Altucher things running, but the Kiyosaki thing's not running right now. And the reason is, well, I don't know the exact reason. However, I do know that that team has decided to start running a tax season promo. Like, before you file your taxes, I've got some cool information we can offer. So they're offering that program at this time, because right now it is March 16th. We're like right in the heat of the end of tax season, right? So that's a hot thing to do. But in my brain, that means, oh, someone's better than you, Kyle. Someone came in and wrote a stronger control. Someone took your stuff and just threw it out the window, and now you're just a nobody, and you'll have to like come back and defend your honor. You see it happen all the time. You'll hear like Eminem and Dr. Dre rap about it like in their songs, and they're like the biggest names in the world in the hip hop industry, and there'll be naysayers or whatever, but they'll say like, oh, you think Dre fell off? Oh, Eminem will have a song about like these unsigned rappers are hungry trying to come at me, and it's like, even those dudes, right? The top of the top of the top, right? And it is in every industry and league, and wherever you're performing, you're always going to feel like someone's after your job. And you're always going to see like their success will also trigger, it sometimes happens, maybe not for everybody, but you can find that their success triggers a feeling of inadequacy in yourself. So again, imposter syndrome is a lifelong condition. It comes with the territory of creating. Okay? I'll just say that. It comes with the territory of creating. And that kind of is a good way to sort of spin into my solution, quote, quote, for imposter syndrome. Because there really is no solution. There are tactics, there's strategies to kind of better deal with it. And I'm going to try to tell you some of those things. Okay, why is imposter syndrome good? I wrote it down so that now I can say it. Why imposter syndrome is good is that we all have it. Everybody struggles with it. So guess what? It weeds out a lot of, weak-kneed people, wimpy, scared people. That imposter syndrome takes care of half the work for you, because those people never start. So it lowers the competition pool so that there's fewer people to compete with. But you still have to compete with some really, really talented people who make it through imposter syndrome. So imposter syndrome is good because it lowers the talent pool, the number of competitors in there. I don't know if you can see this on my shoulder, but my girlfriend's like hair mannequin is in the background, and I usually move it, and it's freaking me out. I don't know. I'm going to leave it. Whatever. Hopefully it's not too distracting. I'm going to try to stay right here. Okay. How to get rid of imposter syndrome. Here's a couple little tactics that I like to use. Oh, here's a good thing. Okay. Let's start with this idea. These things are also interwoven. I don't know where to start per se, but let's start with this idea of being obsessed with being bold. And I have a little bit of like a story for you. So it's funny because the book I just read was All Marketers Are Liars by Seth Godin, and I've been talking about that in the last couple of videos. But there was one book that changed my life before it's so far back. I read this in college and I completely almost forgot about it. But there's a book called Lynchpin by Seth Godin, and my law professor gave us that book. And in that book, he talks about the winds of resistance. And this was before I ever read The War of Art, which is entirely about the resistance, okay? So Seth Godin wrote in there, wherever the winds of resistance are coming from, that is the direction you should be heading. And for whatever reason, that struck a monster chord with me. That's like the one line I remember from the entire book. And it struck such a significant chord with me. And this has to do with being obsessed with being bold. But I started telling my friends that. Remember, I'm still in college. We would go to the beach. And there would be like girls laying out. And there'd be like me and two of my buddies. So there's three of us. If there's like a group of like 3 or 4 girls nearby. And I was like, we should go talk to those girls. And my friends were like, nah, I don't feel like it, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, that's the resistance. Like, that's why you have to go talk to them. And for whatever reason, I just mindlessly internalized that. Like, just the fact that it frightened me to go talk to some strange girls on the beach is such a scary concept. Like, the worst they could do is be like, yeah, go away. But, like, for whatever reason, like, we're socially conditioned to like be terrified of talking to strangers and approaching people we find attractive, especially. Like it really like messes with us. So whenever I was in college, I read that line, and for whatever reason, I internalized it. And from that point on, at age like 22, I think I was, anytime something scared me, I had an innate reaction, like immediately to, okay, I have to conquer this. Like, and that was kind of this obsession with being bold. It came out of nowhere, like, okay, there is this thing, and that on the other side of this fear, there will be great rewards of some type, right? So that became something that I became obsessed with as a result of Seth Godin's book called Linchpin, Are You Indispensable, is the subtitle. And that has led me to get through imposter syndrome quite often, because imposter syndrome, this fear of being found out, this fear of being unmasked for what you really are, is fear, right? So when I feel fear in general, I pay attention, okay? And that's going to bring me to another point. So, okay, I've got a bunch of points. They're all kind of like the same thing with being obsessed with bold. One says, be a masochist. Love being crazy. Go in the direction of the wind's resistance. Okay, so be a masochist. Essentially, there's this idea of vulnerability. And it kind of goes hand in hand. So I have this sort of obsession with being bold. Also goes with this idea that I am going to probably fail quite often. But instead of being afraid of that failure, afraid that what will happen will be embarrassing to me. And this is very important because remember, if you've been following, I walked out on a very cush sales job. I'm talking like I just reset my company computer, like wiped it clean, threw all my stuff in my backpack, got up for lunch and left. I texted my boss and said, I'm not coming back to work. I had no backup plan. I had a little bit of money saved up, but I mean, it was stupid. But I just knew that I wasn't happy with the job, and I knew I wanted to leave, but I was scared. And so I kind of just did it, right? And I'm not recommending that you walk out on your job, but I have like this weird love of, almost like I love to fail in a way, where I love the attempt. I love the try, right? But that doesn't mean I feel like I'm impervious to imposter syndrome. I'll give you another example of imposter syndrome. Trump bonus checks had no copy chief. I wrote hottest IPO for Altucher, and it did well. I wrote the 70-cent crypto for Jim Rickards, and it did well. And then I had these two good promos back to back, and I had the worst imposter syndrome because I had a copy chief. And I was like, I'm just lucky to have this great copy chief. I'm actually not that good. That was my imposter syndrome. I went and I got the opportunity to work on Trump bonus checks with Rob Braddock, who was younger at Agora than me. And I said, that's it. I'll work on this, but I can't have a copy chief over me. And that was purely imposter syndrome. Like, I just had to prove to myself that I could do it. And if I failed, at least I tried, or I would know. Or if I failed, I would also say, okay, well, I'm new, so, it's no big deal if I failed. So I have this weird masochistic sort of love for vulnerability, for being crazy. Like, he's crazy. Why would he write a promo in his third month without a copy chief? He's gonna fail. So what? If I fail, I tried. Most people are chicken, right? There's a weird sort of pride about being obsessed with being bold. So anytime something weirdly worries me or makes me afraid or scared, I just kind of fight against that, like out of principle. And again, I'm 30 years old today. I got that when I was 22, and I've been practicing it ever since. So it's been something that's been like ingrained, built into my system, my decision-making system, and how I approach things ever since I was 22. Down to like when I saw girls on the beach I wanted to talk to with my my buddies, and we were all too scared to go talk to them, right? So for me, I've been practicing like flying in the face of fear since 22, and I still feel imposter syndrome and fear quite often. The other thing, I want to talk about one last thing, is about perfectionism. One of my cures for imposter syndrome is to produce the S word out of stuff. All right, produce the S word out of stuff. That could be like more sales letters, more emails, more content. One of the great ways to battle imposter syndrome is if I'm always working on something new, right, I never feel that fear of I've fallen off. Right, so one thing that I do is to keep myself from hanging my ego on one big project, right? Like, oh my God, my book didn't do well, or my promo didn't do well, or this didn't go well. If I can't never stop and feel bad about any of those things or feel like a failure, because I'm already on to the next thing. And it just so happens that when it comes to going on to the next thing, that's one of the hardest parts, is getting over this idea of perfectionism. So perfection is the enemy of the good. Perfection is the enemy of the good. And Rich Schefren said something once to me that I wrote down. He said, perfectionism, I'm pretty sure this is Rich. Perfectionism is trying to convince the world of something about yourself that you don't believe yourself. So if you're a perfectionist writer, perfectionism would be trying to convince the world of something about yourself, that you're a great writer, that you don't believe yourself, right? So if you're a perfectionist writer, you're trying to convince the world, right? I'm not here to convince the world that I'm a great writer. I'm here to make X number of conversion rate percentages and X number of dollars, right? And if I can just do that, then cool. That's also something I got from Seth Godin's Linchpin book, this idea of shipping. Whenever the thing is done, ship it out. Get it off your hands, get it off your plate. Don't sit there and obsess about it, and don't perfect it or critique it. Finish it and ship it. That is another lifelong practice that'll take a lot of reps. And that's why I say produce the S word out of stuff. The more stuff you're producing, the more projects you've got to do, you're going to be, you're going to be plowing through. I'm looking at this thing in front of me right now. I don't know if I can show you this. Yeah. So this is my priorities. Urgent versus non-urgent, big money over small money, speed over slow things. And now this is my estimates for the sort of projects I've got going on. The videos are for you guys. The videos are for me breaking down the new sales page at kylethewriter.com/book and how long I think that this might take. This is a potential new promo I could work on, and I think promos take about 2 months to get all the way through. And that's a note from my girlfriend. But so yeah, like I've always got what am I gonna do next? So I'm not sitting here obsessing about the performance or how well the thing I just did was. I don't have time to feel like an imposter syndrome. And again, these are tactics to kind of keep imposter syndrome at bay. I don't really think that we can truly crush imposter syndrome and get through it and be done with it. I don't think there's any level of success that makes it go away. Because for instance, if let's say I write a promo, it goes out and it makes $1 million, right? Makes $1 million. If my next promo goes out, makes $700,000. Awesome, right? No, because it's a step backwards. So it's actually like almost more difficult to get through imposter syndrome the higher up the ladder you climb. Because now everything's not as impressive or not as meaningful. Because if I write a promo and it gets $20 million, and then I write another one and it gets 1 million, all of a sudden that million doesn't seem as meaningful, right? So imposter syndrome is going to follow you around. I think what you can do is try to keep from perspective and understand that it's just part of the game. It's part of the creative process, right? And it's good because everybody has to fight through it. Everybody's dealing with it all the time. Everybody thinks that they're only as good as their last thing, so they need to come up with a new thing to prove that they're still good, that they haven't fallen off. That's a competitive advantage for those of us who stick through the game and just keep pumping out content, keep pumping out sales letters, keep pumping out emails, etc., etc., etc. Again, no attendance in today's live, and I'm still out here pumping out content. I don't have time to worry about this one. I've got other things to do. It's not something I'm going to sit here and dwell about, and tomorrow I'll pump out another one. Some people will show up to that, maybe not. I don't know. Again, I'm not going to sit here and dwell on either one or either or, because I've got all those things in that whiteboard right there. I've got my YouTube channel and this thing going on, and I've got like some other personal products or projects and things that I'd be interested in, or even like longer term looking things that I gotta try to put attention towards. So again, produce the S word out of stuff helps you crush through imposter syndrome. I don't have time to dwell and feel like a failure or an imposter. But I am happy for successes, and I learn from the failures, but I have so much going on that one or the other can't really move the needle for me emotionally. I won't feel terrible. I don't feel like all my success, hopes, and dreams are hung on this thing or that thing, because I produce in volume. I think that's the trick. Be a little bit of a masochist for vulnerability and be obsessed with being bold. Instead of worrying that something will work or not work, be obsessed with this feeling of like, oh right, I took that shot. I did something that I wasn't even qualified to do, and hopefully it succeeds. And a lot of times, you'll be surprised to find that it can and just will, especially if you really will it to succeed and you really try really hard. There's a lot of things that you can accomplish that you would think are well out of your depth. So I think be a masochist for vulnerability and being bold, okay? Not necessarily the success. Okay, that's the thing. Get obsessed about being bold and taking chances. The quote I gave you earlier was from Seth Godin's Linchpin. It says, whichever direction the winds of resistance are coming from, that's the direction you head. And for whatever reason, when I was like 22 years old, that quote hit my brain, and I started doing just dumb stuff. Like, and in a good way, I didn't do like bad things. But like I said, like me and my friends would be like walking down the beach and we see some cute girls that we want to talk to, and immediately I would feel scared. And I would say, that means I must talk to them. And I approached everything in my life that way. Like I wanted to quit my job, but I was like, but then I'll go homeless, and then all my friends will think I'm crazy and stupid, and my family will be so upset because I went to college and I got 60 grand in student debt, and I quit my job, and I picked up all my stuff and I walked out of the job. I was like, okay, well actually, it's not that bad. It can't kill me, so I'm going to just go do it. Respect the resistance is another thing I say. Let me talk about respecting the resistance real quick, and then we'll wrap up. Respect the resistance, meaning, I think one of the things I wanted to say was about respecting the resistance is respect that imposter syndrome is part of the resistance. And I respect the hell out of resistance. That's probably what it means about being obsessed and being bold. When I feel the resistance, I respect the power behind the resistance. The resistance is crippling. It will stop you cold in your tracks. You won't be able to do anything. You'll be full of self-doubt. You'll be full of that imposter syndrome. You'll be full of fear. You have to respect that. You have to respect it whenever you decide to go get a second cup of coffee instead of writing that next line of copy, right? Those little things, I respect the resistance so much, which is why I believe in practicing 2 hours of deep work a day. And I track every second of those 2 hours, and I'm not allowed to do anything else. I will not let the resistance into those 2 hours of deep work. That is my time. It's sacred, okay? I respect that whenever I get up for another drink, or I decide to take a bathroom break, or I want to go walk around and with my thoughts, that can all very well be the resistance, because the resistance is smarter than me. The resistance knows how to get into my brain and distract me from my work. I respect the bejesus out of the resistance. And whenever I can feel that fear, which is like the most obvious way to kind of feel the resistance is through fear. When I feel fear, I tackle it. I go after it head on. And I'm more obsessed with the idea that I fought the resistance than whether or not I succeeded or failed. And that's kind of gotten me really through this whole imposter syndrome junk. Sure, I still feel imposter syndrome constantly, but I'm still able to produce in spite of that. I don't know if you can crush and get rid of permanently imposter syndrome, but I'm still able to produce in spite of imposter syndrome because I am willing to respect the resistance and meet it head on and try to. I'm so obsessed with being bold and taking the action. Right, I'm so obsessed with saying I tried that it outweighs the results, sorta. It's a little bit of a gray area, but it outweighs the idea of whether I failed or succeeded. And what's happened is by staying stupid and staying ignorant and just going for it blindly, I've succeeded more than I've failed. And it's kind of just like a byproduct of taking action. A lot of people just never take action. You have never really failed because you've never really tried. You'll find out that there's usually like a good mentor around the corner. There's infrastructure. Your bosses want you to succeed. All these people will be willing to help you out if you would just try. So, I mean, imposter syndrome, we're all going to struggle with it. And again, the higher up the ladder you climb, it'll probably get even stronger. But there are ways to fight through it, and that would be me repeating the entire video over. So that's all I've got. Thanks so much for those who tuned in today for a couple seconds at a time. And again, like it's happening right here, right now. I could easily feel like, I've made 100 YouTube videos and I still can't hold more than 2 spectators at a time. Like, what's wrong with me? My content must suck. I must not be very entertaining. I must not provide any value. Like, nobody's showing up. Or I could think that, hey, it's Saturday at 4 p.m. Maybe people are out doing something else. You know, is it really something about me being a fraud versus like being interesting versus being good or bad? Or is it something I'm just feeling about myself? At the end of the day, I just ignore all those feelings altogether and I just keep making a video every day. And that's kind of what I'm saying. I just produce in bulk, produce in volume, and then I ramble a lot. 25 minutes worth of rambling. All right, guys. Thanks so much for tuning in. I hope this was helpful. I hope this will help you push through some imposter syndrome junk. For those of you interested in my book, it's called Take Their Money. It's available at kylethewriter.com/book. And I got a brand new sales letter up, so you can check that out too and see if I am an imposter or if I am a brilliant copywriter. The screen messed with me because it showed it in reverse. It's backwards from what I was seeing. So when I did this and it went to the other side. Anyway, yeah, check out my book. It's called Take Their Money at kylethewriter.com/book. Thanks so much for tuning in. Peace out, Copy Squad.